Between 1790 and 1890, roughly 7 million Americans abandoned everything they knew to venture across 2,000 miles of wilderness, facing a 1 in 10 chance of dying from disease, starvation, or violence along the way. The journey was brutal and relentless, but for these ordinary people, the promise of land and freedom kept them moving forward despite the odds. Here's what life was really like on the American frontier. Before we start, likes and subscribes help me keep making these. Where are you listening from? Drop your city and time in the comments. I'm always reading them thinking, wait, people in New Zealand listen to history stories to sleep? Alright, let's head back to the American frontier. Trust me, it's gonna be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket, because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Your eyes flutter open to pitch darkness. For a moment, you're disoriented. The air is freezing, the kind of cold that makes your lungs ache. But it's not just the temperature that's got your attention. It's the smell, wood smoke, unwashed bodies, the earthy scent of the dirt floor beneath you, and something else, fear. This isn't your memory foam mattress in your temperature-controlled bedroom. It's 1792, and you're waking up in a crude log cabin in the Appalachian wilderness. The thin deerskin covering barely keeps the November chill from seeping into your bones. Your back aches from sleeping on nothing but pine boughs spread over hard-packed earth. Thomas Harper, 23 years old and stupidly brave, opens his eyes in the darkness, not like your darkness with streetlights bleeding through curtains. This is complete soul-swallowing blackness, the kind that makes you question if your eyes are actually open. "Mary," he whispers, reaching for his wife beside him. Her pregnant belly is hard and round under the thin blanket they share. She mumbles something unintelligible, still mostly asleep. Outside, a wolf howls. Then another answers. They sound close. Too close. Thomas shifts slightly, feeling for the Kentucky long rifle he keeps within arm's reach. Always. Not like now, where you might have a phone by your bed. His lifeline is black powder and lead ball. I should check the livestock, he thinks. But the thought of leaving the relative warmth of the cabin makes him hesitate. It's probably 15 degrees outside, maybe colder. People die in this kind of cold when they're not careful. Not dramatic movie deaths either, just quiet, sleepy ones where your heart slows down and you never wake up. Unlike your cozy bed with its layers of blankets, Thomas and Mary sleep in their clothes, not just any clothes, the same scratchy, homespun wool garments they've worn for days, weeks even. Bathing in winter is something only fools attempt. You wash your face and hands when you can, but a full bath, that's a spring luxury. The cabin itself is barely 12 feet square. Thomas built it with his own hands and the help of 2 other families who settled nearby. The logs are rough-hewn pine, the gaps between them stuffed with mud and moss. Chinking, they call it. It's a constant battle to keep the elements out. The wind finds every crack, every weakness. "You awake?" Mary's voice is barely audible. "Yeah," Thomas replies. Wolves again. Mary's hand finds his in the darkness. Her fingers are calloused from work, spinning wool, making soap, cooking over an open hearth, tending the small garden that had provided their meagre harvest before the frost came. Not like your smooth hands that know keyboards and touchscreens better than actual labour. "The baby's kicking something fierce," she says, guiding his hand to her belly. Thomas feels the strong push against his palm and smiles in the darkness. Strong like his pa. Or stubborn like his ma, Mary counters. A log shifts in the fireplace, sending up a brief flare of light that illuminates the cabin's interior. One room, that's their entire world. A A rough table Thomas made from a split log, 2 three-legged stools, a Dutch oven and cast-iron skillet hanging near the stone fireplace. Their few possessions stored in a wooden chest, extra clothing, Mary's sewing kit, Thomas's hunting knife, a precious Bible brought from Virginia. In the corner, hanging from the rafters, are strips of venison drying into jerky. Below them, a barrel contains their winter store of corn. It's not enough. Thomas knows this, but doesn't say it. They'll need more meat to survive until spring. The fire has died down to embers. Thomas reluctantly leaves the warmth of the bed to add another log. The floor is ice against his stockinged feet. He moves quickly, stirring the coals before placing a split oak log on the glowing embers. "Gonna be a cold one today," he says, a master of understatements. Mary sits up, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. "I'll get breakfast going. There's no sleeping in on the frontier, no lazy Sunday mornings. The day begins when you can see your breath in the cold air inside your own home. And it doesn't end until you can no longer see your hand in front of your face at night." The wolves have gone quiet. Thomas takes his rifle down from the pegs on the wall, checks the priming in the pan. "I'll check the animals," he says, pulling on a deerskin hunting jacket and a fur cap. "Maybe set some snares after." Before opening the door, he stands for a moment bracing himself for the blast of cold air that will rush in. Mary has already moved to the fireplace, carefully feeding kindling to the growing flames. This choreography of survival plays out every morning. "Be careful," Mary says, not looking up from her work. It's what she always says. On the frontier, it's not just a pleasantry, it's deadly serious. Thomas nods, lifts the wooden latch and pushes the door open. The hinges, wooden pegs, not metal, creak in protest. A wall of frigid air hits him, stealing his breath. The small clearing around the cabin is frosted white, the surrounding forest a dark wall of pine and oak. Their 4 chickens and single milk cow are in the lean-to shelter attached to the cabin's side. He can hear the cows' soft lowing. Another day, Thomas thinks, stepping out into the numbing cold. Just got to make it through another day. Wait, let me paint you a picture of just how insane Thomas Harper's gamble was. This wasn't like moving to a new city for a job. This was Thomas, Mary, and 60 pounds of possessions they could carry, heading into virtually unmapped wilderness with nothing but rumours of good land to guide them. Thomas had grown up in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, the son of a tenant farmer who worked someone else's land until the day he died. Thomas wanted more. He wanted his own land, and the only way to get it was to go where nobody wanted to be, the wild frontier beyond the Appalachian Mountains. The stories he'd heard in taverns painted it as an Eden, land so fertile you could drop seeds and they'd grow overnight, forests teeming with game, clear streams full of fish. What those stories conveniently left out were the hostile native tribes defending their hunting grounds, the bone-crushing labour of clearing forest for fields, and the soul-crushing isolation that drove some settlers actually, legitimately insane. "You know what people back east called moving west?" Thomas would later tell his son. "They called it going to the slaughter. That's how bad the odds were." Okay, back to our freezing morning. Thomas checks the cow and chickens, making sure they've survived the night. The cow is his most valuable possession, worth more than the cabin itself. She provides milk, which means butter and cheese. When she calves in the spring, the calf will eventually mean meat or more milk. You don't eat your cow unless you're truly desperate. That's Frontier Economics 101. The chickens are huddled together, puffed up against the cold. 3 hens and a rooster. Eggs are precious protein, especially in winter when hunting can be difficult. Thomas scatters a handful of corn for them, counting each bird to make sure none died in the night. "All accounted for," he mutters to himself, his breath clouding before him. He glances at the sky, pale blue with wispy clouds. Good hunting weather. With Mary expecting, they need meat desperately. The baby will come in late January or early February, the hungriest time of year. The thought sends a spike of anxiety through him. Winter births are dangerous. No doctor for 50 miles, just Mary and the wife of a neighbouring settler who's delivered a few babies. Not going to think about that now, Thomas tells himself, shrugging his rifle onto his shoulder. The forest around them isn't the manicured woodland of modern state parks. It's primeval, massive trees that have stood for centuries, underbrush so thick in places you need a machete to pass through. It's also alive with threats: wolves, bears, panthers, and sometimes other humans with different ideas about whose land this really is. Thomas walks about 50 yards to check his traps from yesterday. The first two are empty, but the third holds a fat rabbit, already stiff with cold and death. Breakfast and maybe lunch. He quickly resets the traps and heads back toward the cabin, the rabbit hanging from his belt. Inside, Mary has the fire going properly now. The cabin is still cold, but at least you can breathe without seeing it. She's stirring corn mush in the iron pot, their staple breakfast. The rabbit will be a welcome addition. Caught something? She asks, nodding toward the rabbit. Just one, Thomas says, already working to skin it at the small table. Nothing is wasted. The fur will be tanned for sewing, the bones boiled for broth, every scrap of meat eaten. I'll head deeper into the valley later, maybe get a deer if I'm lucky. Mary nods, one hand on her back to ease the strain of her pregnancy. Nathaniel's coming by later, said he might have extra cornmeal to trade. Nathaniel Cohen is their nearest neighbour, living a mile through the forest with his wife and 3 children. They'd arrived 6 months before the Harpers, so they'd had a full growing season to establish themselves. In the isolation of the frontier, neighbours are your lifeline, even when they're a mile away. What's he want for it? Thomas asks, working the knife carefully around the rabbit's hind leg. Said he needs help finishing his root cellar before the ground freezes solid. Thomas nods. Currency is scarce on the frontier. Most exchanges are through barter and labour. He'll work half a day digging Nathaniel's root cellar, and in return they'll have cornmeal to stretch their winter stores a little further. Good deal, he says. I'll head there after I hunt. The rabbit is skinned now, its meat dark red against the wooden table. Thomas cuts it into pieces while Mary adds water to the corn mush, stretching it to accommodate the meat. The smell makes both their stomachs growl. "You're not going too far hunting, are you?" Mary asks, not looking up from her cooking. The question has weight. Just 3 weeks ago, a settler 5 miles north had gone hunting and never returned. After 4 days, a search party found what was left of him. Mauled by a bear or wolves, it was hard to tell. Stay close enough to hear the dinner bell, Thomas promises, though they both know it's not entirely true. You have to go where the game is, and sometimes that's farther than is strictly safe. While they eat breakfast, sitting on stools by the fire, Thomas outlines his plans for the day. Hunting, helping Nathaniel, chopping more firewood if there's daylight left. Mary will card wool, tend the animals, and continue making candles from the deer tallow they've saved. Each day is a carefully choreographed struggle to stay ahead of hunger and cold. "Think it'll snow soon?" Mary asks, looking at the small window. Just an opening with a wooden shutter, no glass. Luxuries like window glass are for established towns, not frontier cabins. "Few days, maybe," Thomas says, judging by the feel of the air and the way his left knee aches. An old injury that predicts weather better than any almanac. What they don't discuss are the deeper worries. The winter ahead, the coming baby, the Shawnee hunting party they'd spotted watching their cabin from the ridge last week. Some conversations are too heavy for breakfast, even on the frontier. After eating, Thomas prepares for hunting. He checks his powder horn, making sure it's sealed against moisture. Wet gunpowder is useless gunpowder. He counts his lead balls, 14 left, each one precious. His hunting knife is already sharp. He'd seen to that yesterday. "I'll be back before dark," he tells Mary, pulling on his cap again. "You better," she says, and they both know why. Darkness in the wilderness isn't just an absence of light, it's when the balance of power shifts from humans to predators. Only fools or the desperate travel the forest at night. As Thomas steps outside again, the cold somehow feels even more intense than earlier. The brief warmth of the cabin and food has made him sensitive to it again. He takes a deep breath, letting the chill air fill his lungs. "Right," he mutters to himself. "Let's find some meat." The forest swallows him as he walks away from the clearing. Within moments, the small cabin is out of sight, hidden by the thick trees. Thomas moves quietly, his moccasins barely making a sound on the frozen ground. Every sense is heightened, the way it always is when you step from safety into potential danger. The rifle is heavy in his hands, loaded and ready. His eyes scan constantly, not just for game, but for threats. A snap of a twig might mean dinner, or it might mean something sees you as dinner. The difference is knowing which is which before it's too late. "Hold up," Thomas whispers to himself, freezing in place. 20 yards ahead, a doe is picking her way through the underbrush, unaware of his presence. His heart speeds up. A deer would mean meat for weeks. Security. One less worry in a world full of them. Slowly, so slowly, it barely qualifies as movement. Thomas raises the rifle to his shoulder. The deer pauses, ears twitching, sensing something, but it's too late. The rifle cracks, shattering the forest silence, and the doe drops. "Thank you," Thomas whispers, whether to God or the deer or just the universe. It's hard to say. Frontier gratitude is a complex thing. By the way, the Kentucky long rifle he's using, not exactly what you're picturing from the movies. It's effective to about 200 yards, sure, but it's a single-shot weapon. Miss, and you spend a minute reloading while your dinner, or your enemy, decides whether to stick around. And in cold, like this. Your fingers fumble, powder gets damp, everything takes twice as long. Getting the deer back to the cabin is going to be work. Thomas Field dresses it where it fell, removing the internal organs to lighten the load and prevent the meat from spoiling. His hands are soon slick with blood, steaming in the cold air. This is butchery, not the sanitized meat department at your grocery store. It's intimate and messy and absolutely necessary. Gonna need help dragging this back, he thinks, considering whether to go get Nathaniel now or try to manage it himself. The deer must weigh over 100 pounds, even without the innards, and dragging it might attract predators following the blood trail. He decides to cover the carcass with branches and head to Nathaniel's first. Together they can bring it back more quickly and safely. As he works to hide the deer, a flicker of movement catches his eye. At the top of the ridge, maybe 100 yards away, a figure stands watching him. Thomas freezes, hand moving slowly toward his rifle, but the figure isn't moving aggressively. It's a native man dressed in buckskins with a rifle of his own. For a long moment they simply look at each other across the distance. The man raises his hand in what might be a greeting or might be a warning. Thomas slowly does the same. Neither makes a move to come closer. After a few heartbeats, the native hunter turns and disappears into the forest. Thomas lets out the breath he didn't realise he was holding. That could have gone differently, he mutters. The relations between settlers and native tribes are complicated, to put it mildly. Some tribes are openly hostile, viewing the settlers as invaders, which, let's be honest, they are. Others have established uneasy trading relationships, and everything can change depending on which tribe you're dealing with, which settler, and what happened the last time they met. Thomas finishes concealing the deer and marks a nearby tree with his knife so he can find the spot again. Then he heads toward Nathaniel's homestead, moving as quickly as the rough terrain allows. Nathaniel's place is more established than Thomas's, a slightly larger cabin with a proper stone chimney instead of a stick and mud one. A small field has been cleared from the forest, now fallow for winter but ready for spring planting. Smoke rises from the chimney, a welcome sight in the wilderness. Nathaniel, Thomas calls as he approaches, knowing better than to surprise anyone out here. People tend to shoot first and check identities later. The cabin door opens and Nathaniel steps out, rifle in hand but pointed down. He's older than Thomas, maybe 40, with a full beard and the weathered look of someone who's spent years outdoors. "Thomas?" he nods in greeting. "Little early for digging. Ground still frozen solid." "Got a deer," Thomas explains. "Need help bringing it in. Figured we could do that, then work on your cellar." Nathaniel's face breaks into a grin. "Well now, that's good news. Sarah," he calls back into the cabin. "Thomas got a deer. We'll be back with meat," a woman's voice acknowledges from inside. Nathaniel grabs his coat and hat. "Where'd you drop it?" "North Ridge, maybe half mile." As they walk, Thomas mentions the native hunter he saw. Nathaniel listens carefully. "Probably Shawnee," he says. "Been seeing them more often lately. Hunting party, most likely. Not war party. They'd have looked different." "Friendly?" Thomas asks. Nathaniel shrugs. "Not unfriendly. They know we're here. We know they're here. Long as we don't cause trouble. They probably won't either, but keep your rifle handy, just the same." When they reach the deer, both men work quickly to hoist it onto a makeshift travois Nathaniel brought. 2 long poles with a hide stretched between them. Dragging it is still work, but manageable between 2 men. "Good size," Nathaniel comments, examining the deer. "Fat, too. Been eating well before winter set in proper." They drag the deer back to Thomas's cabin first. Mary comes out when she hears them approach, her face lighting up at the sight of the deer. "Oh, thank the Lord," she says, hand on her belly. "Got lucky," Thomas says, though they all know luck had little to do with it. Skill and persistence, more like. "I'll help you hang and skin it," Nathaniel offers. "Then we can see about that root cellar." The men hang the deer from a stout tree branch near the cabin. Skinning a deer properly takes time. You want to keep the hide intact for tanning. Nothing goes to waste. The meat will be cut into strips for drying, ground for sausage, or preserved in various ways. The hide will become clothing or blankets. The sinew will be used for sewing, the bones for tools, or boiled for broth. Even the hooves can be used to make glue. As they work, Nathaniel asks, "You set for winter, Thomas?" It's a loaded question on the frontier. No one is ever truly set for winter. There's always more you could have done, more you should have stored, more preparations you could have made. Getting there, Thomas answers diplomatically. "This deer helps. Got corn enough, I think. Firewood's good. It's Mary I worry about." He glances toward the cabin where his wife has gone back inside. Nathaniel nods understandingly. "Sarah says she'll come when it's time. She's delivered 6 babies out here, not counting our own 3. This reassurance helps, but only somewhat. Childbirth on the frontier is terrifyingly dangerous. No doctors, no hospitals, no medicines beyond herbal remedies of questionable effectiveness. If something goes wrong, Thomas stops the thought before it fully forms. Appreciate that," he says simply. By midday, the deer is properly dressed and the meat secured. Some cuts are already smoking over a small fire Thomas built, while others hang in the cold air to age for a few days before preservation. They've separated out portions for Nathaniel's family as payment for his help. Another example of frontier economics. Now they turn to the work at Nathaniel's homestead. The root cellar is half dug, a pit that will eventually be lined with stone and topped with a heavy door. Root cellars are essential for frontier survival, a naturally cool, consistent place to store vegetables, preserves, and even some meat through the winter months. Gotta get at least 3 feet down, Nathaniel explains, below the frost line, otherwise everything in there will freeze and thaw until it rots. The digging is brutal work. The ground is already partially frozen, and each shovelful requires maximum effort. Both men are soon sweating despite the cold air, their breath coming in white clouds as they labour. Heard from Jenkins last week, Nathaniel says between shovelfuls. Says there's 20 new families settled over in the Ohio country this year. 20? Thomas is surprised. That's a veritable population explosion for the frontier. Yep. Government's offering land cheap, $1 an acre, I heard. This is the rhythm of frontier expansion. First, the lone pioneers like Thomas and Nathaniel, then a trickle of settlers, then a flood as word spreads of opportunity. Soon there will be a proper town, then another further west, as people like Thomas decide it's getting too crowded and move on. Gonna be neighbours everywhere before long, Nathaniel continues. Won't be able to spit without hitting someone's cabin. Thomas isn't sure how he feels about this. Part of him came west for the solitude, the chance to build something from nothing without interference. Another part recognises the safety and community that comes with numbers. Wonder what the Shawnee think of that, Thomas muses. Nathaniel's expression darkens. Nothing good, I'd wager. 20 families means 20 rifles, but it also means 20 times the hunting, 20 times the trees cut down. Think there'll be trouble? Always is, eventually. Nathaniel drives his shovel into the hard earth with extra force. Always is. They work until the light begins to fade. The root cellar isn't finished, but it's significantly deeper. Another day's work should complete it. Both men are exhausted, muscles aching from the labour. Come in for some stew before you head back, Nathaniel offers. Sarah always makes too much. The inside of Nathaniel's cabin is similar to Thomas's, but with the lived-in feel of a place that's been occupied longer. 3 children, 2 boys and a girl ranging from about 4 to 10 years old, sit at a table doing lessons from a worn primer. Sarah, a thin woman with a perpetually worried expression, stirs a large pot over the fire. Smells good, Thomas says, removing his hat. Or rabbit and whatever vegetables we had left, Sarah explains. Stretch it with cornmeal, goes further that way. The meal is simple, but filling, exactly what's needed after a day of physical labour. Thomas eats gratefully, aware that sharing food is no small gesture on the frontier, where everyone lives close to the edge of hunger. As promised, Nathaniel sends Thomas home with a small sack of cornmeal. For Mary, he says, tell her Sarah will be by tomorrow to check on her. The walk back to his own cabin is tense. Darkness is falling rapidly, and Thomas is acutely aware of every sound in the forest around him. A branch cracking might be a deer, or something hunting deer, something hunting him. The relief when his cabin comes into view is palpable. A warm glow from the single window tells him Mary has kept the fire going. He quickens his pace for the last 100 yards. Inside, Mary has made the small cabin as comfortable as frontier life allows. The fire burns steadily, casting dancing shadows on the log walls. She's hung the rabbit fur from this morning to dry and has been working on a small gown for the baby, using fabric from one of her old dresses. "You're late," she says, but there's no accusation in it. Just the relief of a woman whose husband has returned safely from the dangerous world outside. Deer took time, then the digging. Thomas sets down his rifle and the sack of cornmeal. Nathaniel says Sarah will visit tomorrow. Mary nods, one hand automatically going to her belly. Good, I've been feeling different, heavier, Thomas doesn't know what to say to this. The approaching birth looms large in both their minds, a combination of joy and terror. Instead, he sits beside her and places his hand on her stomach, feeling the strong movements of the child within. "Strong," he says again, "like his pa." Or stubborn like his ma, Mary completes their ritual exchange, smiling despite her exhaustion. Outside, the wind picks up, whistling through the chinks in the cabin walls. The temperature is dropping rapidly with the darkness. Another cold night ahead. "I'll bank the fire," Thomas says, moving to prepare the hearth for overnight. Banking coals properly means having fire in the morning without having to start from scratch, a critical skill when matches don't exist, and starting a fire means flint, steel, and patience. As they prepare for bed, the same bed they woke in that morning, Thomas takes a moment to look around their small cabin. It's not much. Dirt floor, rough furniture, drafty walls, but it's theirs. Every log placed by his hands, every inch of it representing freedom from tenant farming, from working another man's land, from the crowded conditions back east. Was it worth it? Mary asks quietly, reading his thoughts as she often does. Thomas looks at her, at the home they've made, at the future growing in her belly. "Ask me in spring," he says with a small smile. "After we've survived winter." They settle into bed together, pulling the thin blankets and furs around them as the temperature continues to drop outside. Tomorrow will bring the same challenges. Food, firewood, preparation for winter, the constant vigilance required to stay alive in a place that can kill you 100 different ways. But tomorrow is tomorrow. For now, they have shelter, food in their bellies, and each other. On the American frontier, that's as close to security as anyone can hope for. The last thing Thomas does before sleep claims him is reach out to touch his rifle, making sure it's within easy reach, just in case, always just in case. James Harper stands at the bow of the flatboat, squinting against the morning sun as it sparkles off the Ohio River. At 26, he's the spitting image of his father Thomas. Same broad shoulders, same stubborn jaw, same reckless hope pushing him westward. But the frontier James faces in 1824 isn't the dense Appalachian wilderness his father conquered. It's a different beast entirely. Pa would have laughed at this, James thinks, watching the parade of boats drifting downriver, called it too damn crowded, and it is, compared to the isolation Thomas and Mary endured. The Ohio River is America's first superhighway, a liquid road carrying humanity westward. Keel boats, flatboats, and the occasional early steamboat create a floating migration of dreamers, schemers, and desperate souls looking for something better than what they left behind. James. Sarah Harper's voice cuts through his thoughts. Emma's gotten into the flower again. James turns to see his wife holding their squirming 3-year-old daughter, her face and dress covered in white powder. Behind them, their flatboat is a hive of cramped activity. Thomas Jr., 16 and sullen about leaving his friends back in Pennsylvania, is checking the steering oar. Elizabeth, their 12-year-old, feeds scraps to the 2 chickens they've brought along, and 6-year-old William is doing what William always does, asking questions nobody can answer. But why does the river bend here, and how deep is it? Could a fish big enough to eat our boat live in there? Pa, are there river monsters? James scoops up Emma, who giggles and leaves ghostly flower handprints on his shirt. No river monsters, Will, just catfish the size of small children who don't listen to their mothers. William's eyes go wide. Really? No, not really, Sarah sighs, taking Emma back. Your father thinks he's funny. "I'm hilarious," James says with a wink to William. "Just ask anyone." The reality is, this journey terrifies him more than he'll admit. Everything they own is on this crude vessel, a floating platform of rough-hewn planks with a small shelter in the centre where they sleep. All their possessions, their livestock, their hopes. One wrong move, one hidden snag or sandbar, and they could lose it all. Think of it like the worst possible moving day. You've got your spouse, 4 kids, 2 dogs, 3 chickens, and literally everything you own crammed onto a homemade raft that's essentially just a floating shed. Now navigate that down a river with unpredictable currents. Other boats trying not to hit you, and oh yeah, no engine. Just a couple of long poles and a steering oar, and you have to live on this thing for weeks. Now that's what I call a family vacation. The Mississippi Valley that James has bet their future on isn't the untamed wilderness his father faced, but it's hardly settled either. The Northwest Territory has been carved into states, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, but much of it remains raw, awaiting the plough and the axe. It's the middle stage of America's westward growth, not the first wave of isolated pioneers like Thomas, but not yet the established society that will follow. "Pa, look," William points excitedly. "Another boat?" A larger keel boat passes them, poled upstream against the current by a crew of boatmen, hard, rough men who walk the length of the boat pushing long poles against the riverbed, then walk back to the front and do it again, mile after mile, hour after hour. It's brutal work. "Thank the Lord we're going downstream," Sarah murmurs, watching the straining men. The keelboat crew eyes their flatboat as they pass. One spits a stream of tobacco juice into the river. Another calls out, "Where you headed, farmer?" "Illinois," James answers cautiously. Rivermen have a reputation for hard drinking and harder fighting. The man nods. "Good land there," they say. "If the fever don't get you first." With that cheerful assessment, they continue their back-breaking journey upstream, disappearing around the bend. "What fever, Pa?" William asks immediately. James ruffles his son's hair. "Nothing to worry about, Will, but it is. The fever, whether malaria, typhoid, or any number of other diseases, is a very real threat in the Mississippi Valley. Low-lying areas near rivers breed mosquitoes and contaminated water. Many a hopeful settler has died shivering and delirious before their first crop could be harvested. The day passes slowly, the landscape sliding by like a painting, slowly unrolling. Forests give way to occasional clearings where cabins or small settlements huddle near the riverbank. At midday, they pass a small town, just a cluster of wooden buildings with a few crude docks where boats can tie up. "Should we stop?" Sarah asks, shading her eyes to see better. James considers it. They need supplies, flour to replace what Emma spilled, maybe some salt pork, but stops means spending the little money they have. Every penny spent now is one less for buying land when they reach Illinois. "We'll stop at Cincinnati," he decides, "another day downstream." Sarah nods, trusting his judgment, even if she might disagree. That's their partnership, forged through 12 years of marriage and the shared work of building a life. Thomas and Mary Harper had taught them that. The frontier demands unity. Divided families don't survive. That night, they moor the flatboat along the shore, driving stakes into the bank to secure it. James and Thomas Jr. collect firewood, while Sarah and Elizabeth prepare a simple meal, cornbread and a stew made from dried beans and the last of a ham they'd brought from Pennsylvania. As darkness falls, other fires appear along the riverbank, other families on other boats, all moving westward with the current. James wonders about their stories, their reasons for pulling up stakes and risking everything on the promise of unseen land. "You think we'll be there soon, Pa?" Thomas Jr. asks as they sit around their small fire on the riverbank. Another week, maybe 2, James answers. Depends on the river, depends on if we run into trouble. What kind of trouble? William asks, always curious. Sandbars, snags, river pirates. James immediately regrets mentioning the last one when he sees Sarah's expression. River pirates? William's eyes are huge now. Very rare, James adds quickly. And they go after merchant boats carrying goods, not family boats like ours. Because we have nothing worth stealing, Thomas Jr. mutters. We have everything worth stealing, Sarah corrects him firmly. We have each other. We have our health and our strength. We have the tools to build a new life. That's more than many have. James looks at his wife gratefully. She's right, of course. What they lack in money, they make up for in youth, health and skills. James can farm, hunt and work wood. Sarah can spin, weave, preserve food and a dozen other essential frontier skills. The children are old enough to work alongside them. It's a fortune in capability, if not in coin. Bible says not to store up treasures on earth, James adds. Seems like good advice when you're trying to fit your life on a flatboat. This gets a smile even from Thomas Jr., who's been the hardest to convince about this move. His son had a sweetheart back in Pennsylvania, though he thinks James doesn't know about her. Leaving was especially hard for him. Get some sleep, James tells them all. I'll take first watch and wake me for second, Thomas Jr. offers, surprising James with his volunteerism. The night is alive with sounds, frogs, insects, the occasional splash of something in the river. James sits with his rifle across his knees, watching the moon's reflection ripple on the water. He's not really expecting trouble, but frontier habit runs deep. His father had taught him that vigilance is the tax you pay for survival. Morning comes damp and foggy. They eat a cold breakfast of cornbread, not wanting to rebuild the fire. Time is precious when travelling by river. Every hour of daylight is a few more miles closer to their destination. By mid-morning, the fog has burned away, revealing a river busy with commerce. More boats appear as they approach Cincinnati, from crude rafts like theirs to proper keelboats and the occasional majestic steamboat belching smoke and churning the water. Would you look at that? Sarah breathes as a particularly large steamboat passes them, its paddle wheel throwing spray into the air. It's like seeing a mythical creature, something from stories come to life. Cincinnati itself appears suddenly around a bend, a proper city with brick buildings, church steeples and a waterfront crowded with vessels of all descriptions. The noise hits them first, human voices, animal sounds, the clanging of metal on metal from blacksmith shops, the hiss and roar of steamboat engines. My God, James murmurs, it's grown. He'd passed through Cincinnati 8 years earlier on a trip with his father, when it had been little more than an overgrown village. Is that where we're going to live? William asks, eyes wide at the bustling scene. No, much further downriver and then west, James explains. This is just a stop. Navigating their unwieldy flatboat through the busy harbour is nerve-wracking. Larger vessels have little patience for families like theirs, and more than once they have to pole frantically to avoid being crushed by a steamboat or trading schooner. Watch where you're going, you damn fool, a man on a keelboat shouts as they narrowly avoid collision. Sorry, James calls back, face burning with embarrassment. He's a good farmer, but a novice boatman at best. They find a spot to tie up, paying a small fee to a harbour master who looks at their homemade craft with barely disguised contempt. Cincinnati may be a frontier city by Eastern standards, but it has its own hierarchies and snobberies already. Stay with the boat, James tells Thomas Jr. Your mother and I will get supplies. Can I come? William begs. Please? James looks at Sarah, who nods. You can come, but you stay right with us. No wandering off. The Cincinnati waterfront is a shock to their senses after weeks on the river. Crowds of people push past, rivermen in rough clothes, merchants in finer garb, women in dresses much more fashionable than Sarah's homespun, children running errands or playing in the streets. And the smells, wood smoke and horse manure, fresh bread from bakeries, the reek of fish from the market, tobacco, whiskey from numerous taverns, unwashed bodies, tar and hemp rope from the shipyards. It's overwhelming after the clean air of the river. William clings to James's hand, suddenly shy in the face of so much humanity. There's so many people, he whispers. Wait until you see New Orleans, a passing riverman laughs, overhearing. This here's just a village compared to that. They make their way to a general store where James trades some of their precious coins for flour, salt, coffee, and a few other necessities. The prices are higher than back home, and he winces as he counts out the money. Highway robbery, he mutters to Sarah. Supply and demand, the shopkeeper says with a shrug. Everything headed west costs more because that's where everyone's going. On their way back to the boat, they pass a man selling newspapers. James hesitates, then spends a penny on one. News is as much a necessity as salt in the isolated places they're headed. Waste of money, Sarah says, but without heat. She knows James's hunger for information. President election coming up, James defends himself. Adams against Jackson, should know who'll be running the country we're helping build. Back at the boat, they find Thomas Jr. in conversation with a man in a reasonably respectable coat. Not a riverman, but some sort of merchant by the look of him. Pa, this is Mr. Davidson, Thomas Jr. says as they approach. He was asking about our plans. James immediately feels a prickle of suspicion. The frontier breeds wariness of strangers, especially well-dressed ones asking personal questions. James Harper, he introduces himself with cautious politeness. This is my wife Sarah. Or Robert Davidson. The man offers his hand. Land agent, I couldn't help noticing your flatboat and family. Headed to Illinois, your boy tells me? That's right. Whereabouts? James hesitates. There's no reason not to answer, but frontier caution runs deep. Sangamon River country. Heard the soil's good there? Davidson nods approvingly. It is indeed, rich and black as coffee. I happen to represent several landowners in that very region who have prime parcels available for immediate settlement. Now James understands, not a threat, just a salesman. We're looking to claim unimproved land, government land. Davidson's smile doesn't waver, but his eyes cool slightly. No commission to be made here? Ah, well, that's certainly an option, though you should know the best lands near waterways are already claimed. An unimproved land means months of backbreaking work before you can even plant a crop. I'm not afraid of work, Mr. Davidson. Of course not. No one travelling as you are could be. Davidson tips his hat. Good day to you, Mr. Harper, Mrs. Harper. Perhaps we'll meet again in Illinois. As he walks away, Sarah gives James a look. Land agent, my foot, probably a speculator. She's likely right. Land speculation is rampant on the frontier. Men buy up large tracts of government land cheap, then sell smaller parcels at inflated prices to families like theirs. Some are honest businessmen, others a little better than swindlers selling swampland as farmland to Easterners who don't know any better. Let's get moving, James says. I want to be downriver before dark. They cast off again, rejoining the flow of boats headed west and south. The current seems faster here, carrying them more swiftly toward their destination. Or maybe it's just James's imagination, his eagerness to reach their new home and begin the real work of building a life. That night, moored once again along the riverbank, James unfolds the newspaper and reads by firelight while the others sleep. News from Washington about the upcoming election, reports from the eastern cities about commerce and industry, a small article about conflicts with Indians in the Illinois territory that makes him frown with concern. A hand touches his shoulder and he looks up to find Sarah awake, watching him. "Anything interesting?" she asks softly, not wanting to wake the children. Jackson's still popular with the common folk, Adams with the merchants and landowners. He hesitates. "And there's been some trouble with the Kickapoo near where we're headed." Sarah sighs. "There's always trouble somewhere, James. We knew that coming in." It's true. The frontier is defined by conflict between settlers and natives, between farmers and speculators, between civilization and wilderness. His father had faced it. Now it's his turn. "We'll be fine," he assures her, folding the paper. "We're Harpers, after all." Sarah smiles at that. "Yes, and Harpers are too stubborn to fail. Your father taught you that. Among other things." James puts another small log on the fire. "Get some sleep. I'll wake Thomas for his watch soon." But after Sarah returns to their makeshift shelter, James sits a while longer, watching the river flow by, black and mysterious in the darkness. He thinks of his father, who died 5 years ago after a hard but ultimately successful life in the wilderness he'd tamed. Thomas Harper had turned that crude cabin into a proper farm, raised 3 children to adulthood, and even lived to see grandchildren born. Now James is following his path westward, but under very different circumstances. The frontier his father knew, isolated, primal, untouched, is already fading. This new frontier is a place of rapid change, of speculation and development, of systems and governments extending their reach ever further. Is there still room for a family like his? Still a chance to claim a piece of land and make it truly their own? Only one way to find out, James murmurs to himself, banking the fire for the night. The next morning dawns clear and cool. They make good time, the river carrying them steadily southward. Around midday, William, who's appointed himself lookout at the bow, calls out excitedly, "Papa, look!" James joins him, following his pointing finger to where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi in a turbulent confluence of currents. It's an awesome sight, the relatively clear waters of the Ohio joining the muddy, massive flow of the Mississippi, 2 great arteries of the continent merging into one. "That's it," James says quietly. "The great river." William Harper wipes sweat from his eyes and squints at the endless prairie stretching before him. At 32, he's no longer the curious little boy who peppered his father with questions about river monsters. Now he's the one with children asking impossible questions. Questions like, "Are we there yet?" and "Why did we leave Illinois?" And the hardest one of all, is Ma going to die like the Stevens woman? The year is 1845, and William Harper is part of something unprecedented in American history, a massive migration of ordinary people travelling 2,000 miles across a continent. The Oregon Trail isn't just a pathway, it's a river of humanity flowing westward, carrying wagons, livestock, hopes and fears toward the promised land of Oregon Territory. "How many wagons you figure are ahead of us, Mr. Harper?" asks Daniel Preston, a former blacksmith from Ohio who's travelled alongside the Harpers since Independence, Missouri. William shakes his head. 100, maybe more. Trail's busy this year. Busy is an understatement. Word has spread east about the fertile Willamette Valley where rain falls generously and the soil grows anything you plant, where a man can claim 640 acres, an entire square mile, for nothing but the courage to get there and the strength to work it. A stark contrast to the increasingly crowded Illinois, where William's farm had grown too small to support his growing family. "Pa, 7-year-old Thomas runs up, his face flushed with excitement. "Mr. Wilson says there's buffalo ahead." William nods to his son. "Tell your ma I'll be back. Going to check." He strides forward past several wagons where men walk alongside oxen and women carry infants or toddlers too tired to walk further today. Everyone looks exhausted. They've been on the trail for 8 weeks now, and the initial excitement has long since faded into the grinding routine of dawn to dusk travel. At the front of their wagon train, William finds James Wilson, their elected captain, standing in his stirrups and peering through a spyglass. "Buffalo?" William asks without preamble. Wilson hands him the glass. "See for yourself. About 2 miles out, looks like." William focuses the spyglass and feels his heart quicken. There they are, dark shapes grazing the distant prairie, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. A sight his grandfather Thomas would have given an arm to witness. "We hunting?" William asks, handing back the glass. Wilson hesitates. "Need the meat? That's certain. But a hunt means stopping early, delaying our schedule." "Schedule?" William can't keep the edge from his voice. "We're already behind because of the sickness." The sickness, cholera, had swept through their company 2 weeks earlier, killing 4 people and leaving a dozen more weakened. They'd lost precious days burying the dead and waiting for the ill to recover or die. Wilson's jaw tightens. "I'm well aware, Harper, but every day we delay means less time to build shelter before winter in Oregon. Won't matter if we starve getting there." The two men stare at each other. There's been tension between them since independence. Wilson is a businessman who runs the wagon train like a military company, all schedules and rules. William, like his father and grandfather before him, bristles under such authority. Finally, Wilson sighs. "Fine, we'll make early camp. Tell the men to ready their rifles." William nods. A small victory won. Fresh meat means strength, means survival. The dried beef and hardtack they've been eating won't sustain them through the mountains ahead. As he walks back to his wagon, William passes Mrs. Chen, a Chinese woman travelling with her merchant husband to Oregon. She's struggling with a water barrel that's come loose from their wagon. "Here!" William stops to help, easily lifting the heavy barrel back into place. "Thank you," she says with a slight accent. "My husband, he check on oxen." William secures the barrel with a length of rope. "Buffalo ahead. We're making camp early to hunt." Mrs. Chen's face brightens. "Fresh meat I make. Good stew. You bring some." "Yes, ma'am," William promises with a smile. He's come to appreciate Mrs. Chen's cooking, so different from anything he's tasted before. That's one unexpected benefit of the trail, meeting people from places he'd only heard of in stories. The Oregon Trail doesn't just connect east and west, it mixes people who'd never otherwise meet. William's wagon company includes farmers from 6 different states, a German family who barely speaks English, the Chinese merchant couple, a doctor from Boston, and a group of single men heading to Oregon to seek their fortunes. They all left different lives behind, but out here they're united by a common purpose and common dangers. Back at his own wagon, William finds his wife Rebecca tending to their youngest, 3-year-old Sarah, who's developed a worrying cough in the past few days. "How is she?" he asks, laying a hand on the child's forehead. "No fever, thank God. Better, I think." Rebecca looks exhausted, dark circles under her eyes from nights spent watching over their daughter. The willow bark tea seems to help. Rebecca Harper is 30, her once smooth face now weathered by sun and wind. She hadn't wanted to leave Illinois, hadn't wanted to risk their 4 children on this dangerous journey, but she'd agreed because she trusted William, just as his mother had trusted his father, and his grandmother had trusted his grandfather. 3 generations of Harper women following their men into the wilderness. buffalo ahead, William tells her. We're stopping early to hunt. Relief washes over Rebecca's face. They haven't had fresh meat in nearly 2 weeks. The men are organising now. I'll go after I check the wagon. William inspects their wagon carefully, a daily ritual. The wheels take the most punishment, rattling loose over the rough trail. He tightens the iron tyre on the left rear wheel, which has developed a worrying wobble. Then he checks the axles, the tongue, the canvas cover that protects their possessions from sun and rain. This wagon is their entire world now. It carries everything they own, from cooking pots to family heirlooms. If it breaks beyond repair, they'd have to abandon most of their possessions by the trail, as others have already done. The Oregon Trail is littered with discarded furniture, books, even family pianos. Things thought essential back east that become unbearable burdens when oxen start to weaken or wagon wheels start to crack. So the hunting party sets out, 12 men with rifles, William among them. They approach the buffalo herd cautiously, downwind. These animals may look like lumbering mountains of meat, but they can run faster than horses when startled. Remember, Wilson whispers as they near the herd, we need the meat, not the thrill. Clean shots only. William resists, rolling his eyes, as if he needs instruction on hunting from a former dry goods merchant. When they're within range, the men spread out and take aim. William selects a young bull away from the main herd. He takes a deep breath, steadies his rifle against his shoulder, and squeezes the trigger. The rifle's crack is joined by others, and suddenly the prairie erupts with noise and movement. The herd panics, thundering away in a cloud of dust, but several animals lie still on the grass. William's bull is down, shot clean through the heart. Pride swells in his chest. He's provided for his family, just as the Harper men always have. It takes the rest of the day to butcher the animals and transport the meat back to camp. The entire company comes alive with activity. Women preparing for smoking and drying most of the meat while cooking choice cuts for dinner. Children gather wood for the many fires needed. Even the elderly help, rendering fat for future use. That night, the mood in camp is lighter than it's been in weeks. Stomachs are full, and the knowledge that they'll have meat for days lifts everyone's spirits. Someone produces a fiddle, and impromptu dancing breaks out in the centre of their circled wagons. William sits with Rebecca and their children, watching the celebration. Thomas and 11-year-old Emma have joined the dancing, while Rebecca holds sleeping Sarah. Their middle child, 9-year-old James, named for his grandfather, leans against William's side. "Pa, tell about when Grandpa came west?" James asks, a frequent request. "Again? You've heard it 100 times. Please? I like the part about the river pirates." William chuckles. There weren't really river pirates. Your grandpa just liked to make the story exciting, but he tells it anyway, how James and Sarah Harper had loaded everything they owned onto a flatboat and floated down the Ohio River, how they'd fought the Mississippi's current and eventually bought a wagon to reach the Illinois country. He embellishes a bit, as his father had, because that's what Harper men do. They turn hardship into legend. "Your grandpa would have loved this," William says, gesturing to the vast prairie around them. "He always wanted to see what was beyond the next hill." "That's what you always say too," Rebecca points out with a smile. "Harper blood," William shrugs. "Can't fight it." As the dancing continues, Dr. Elliot from Boston makes his way over to check on little Sarah. "Breathing sounds better," he says after listening to her chest. "Keep up with the willow bark tea and try to keep her out of the dust as much as possible." William nods gratefully. Having a doctor in their company has already saved lives, including possibly his daughter's. Not every wagon train is so fortunate. "What about the mountains, Doc?" William asks quietly, not wanting the children to hear. Will she be strong enough? The doctor's expression turns grave. They're still on the plains, but the Rocky Mountains loom in their future. High passes where the air is thin and the nights freezing cold, even in summer. Let's get her fully recovered first, Dr. Elliot says diplomatically. Then worry about the mountains. After the doctor moves on, Rebecca leans close to William. We could winter at Fort Laramie, she suggests. Many companies do. Continue in the spring when she's stronger. William shakes his head. Wintering costs money we don't have, and it means arriving in Oregon after the best land is claimed. They've had this argument before, the eternal tension between safety and opportunity. William understands his wife's fears. 4 children have died on the trail so far, 2 from accidents and 2 from disease. But turning back or delaying isn't an option. The Harpers have always moved forward. Morning comes cruelly early on the Oregon Trail. By first light, the camp is already stirring. Fires being lit, breakfast cooking, oxen being hitched to wagons. The trail allows no lazy mornings, no slow starts. Every day of travel matters. As William helps load their wagon, Thomas runs up, face pale. "Pa, come quick, the Chen wagon." William follows his son to where a crowd has gathered around the Chinese couple's wagon. Mr. Chen is sitting on the ground, holding his leg and grimacing in pain. "Broke it," Dr. Elliot explains as William approaches. Wagon wheel caught a rut and tipped, fell under it. A broken leg on the Oregon Trail is potentially a death sentence. A man who can't walk, can't lead his oxen, can't hunt, can't care for his wagon. What will they do? William asks, though he already knows the answer. In most cases, a family with a seriously injured member has to turn back or risk death. "We go on," Mrs. Chen says firmly, standing beside her husband. "I drive wagon." A murmur runs through the gathered crowd. A woman driving a wagon alone. It happened occasionally out of necessity, but rarely by choice. "Mrs. Chen," Wilson begins gently, "perhaps you should consider—" "No," she cuts him off. "We sell everything in China to come here. No go back." William finds himself admiring her determination. It reminds him of stories about his grandmother Mary, who'd given birth in a crude cabin in the wilderness with only a neighbor woman to help. "I'll drive with her," he finds himself saying, "at least until Mr. Chen can manage again." Rebecca gives him a look. They both know this means splitting their family temporarily. She'll have to manage their wagon and children alone, just until Fort Laramie, William adds. By then he might be able to handle the reins himself. So it's decided. The Chens will continue, with William helping drive their wagon. It means more work for everyone, but on the Oregon Trail, you help your neighbours. Not out of charity, but survival. Today, the Chens need help. Tomorrow, it might be the Harpers. As they set out that morning, William walking alongside the Chen's oxen, he thinks about how different this journey is from those of his father and grandfather. Thomas Harper had faced true wilderness, isolated and untamed. James Harper had navigated the early transportation networks of rivers and crude roads. But William is part of a massive, organised migration. The Oregon Trail isn't wilderness anymore. It's a highway of sorts with established stopping points, river crossings, even trading posts along the way. The challenges are different now. Not isolation, but disease spreading through crowded camps. Not navigating unknown terrain, but managing the logistics of moving thousands of people across a continent. 3 days later, they reach the Platte River, wide, shallow, and treacherous with quicksand. This crossing has claimed wagons, livestock, and human lives, but there's no way around it. The company stops to assess the challenge. Some want to cork their wagons and float them across. as they'd heard other trains had done. Others, including Wilson, favour building rafts for their possessions and walking the livestock through the shallows. I've seen too many wagons swept away trying to float them, William argues at the leaders' meeting. The Platte looks calm, but it's unpredictable. In the end, they choose the rafting approach. It's slower, but safer. The next 3 days are consumed with dismantling wagons, building crude rafts, ferrying possessions across, then reassembling everything on the far bank. It's exhausting, dirty work, but they don't lose a single person or wagon. Small victories on the Oregon Trail are celebrated like major triumphs. That night, despite their exhaustion, spirits are high around the campfires. "Crossed the Platte without drowning," exclaims Daniel Preston, raising a tin cup of coffee. "I call that a good day's work." William nods in agreement, sipping from his own cup. His muscles ache from the labour, but it's a satisfying kind of pain, the kind that means progress. Rebecca joins him, little Sarah asleep in her arms. "How's Mr. Chen?" "Better. Doc says the bone's setting clean, no sign of infection." "Good." She sits beside him on a fallen log. "The children miss you at our wagon." "I know, not much longer." William puts an arm around her shoulders. "How's Sarah's cough?" "Almost gone. Dr. Elliot says the worst is past." One more worry eased, but on the Oregon Trail, new worries always replace the old ones. The mountains still lie ahead, and beyond them the hot, dry deserts of the Snake River country, and always the invisible threat of disease lurking in crowded camps and contaminated water. A commotion near the edge of camp draws their attention. A rider has arrived, a scout from another wagon train ahead of them on the trail. Wilson brings the man to the central fire so everyone can hear his news. The scout looks exhausted, his horse lathered with sweat. "Cholera's broken out bad at Fort Laramie," he announces without preamble. 20 dead already, fort's quarantined. A stunned silence falls over the camp. Fort Laramie had been their next major milestone, a place to rest, restock supplies, perhaps even mail letters back east. "How far does the quarantine extend?" Dr. Elliot asks. 5 miles in all directions, the scout answers. "They're turning away all wagon trains." "Is there a way around?" Wilson demands. "North route adds about 40 miles. South is shorter but rougher terrain." The discussion explodes around the fire. Which route to take? Whether to wait until the quarantine lifts? How to handle their dwindling supplies without the expected restocking at the fort? William sits quietly, processing the news. Cholera is the spectre that haunts every wagon train. It strikes without warning, killing within hours. Healthy people at breakfast can be dead by dinner, and it spreads like wildfire through crowded camps. Rebecca's hand finds his, squeezing tightly. They're both thinking of their children, especially Sarah, still recovering from her illness. "We should take the north route," William says, loud enough to cut through the chatter. 40 extra miles is better than risking cholera." Several voices agree, but Wilson looks troubled. "That puts us a week behind schedule, maybe more." "Schedule?" William feels his temper rising again. "What good is a schedule if we're all dead from cholera?" "He's right," Dr. Elliot supports him. "I've seen cholera outbreaks. We want no part of it." The debate continues for hours, but eventually the north route wins out. They'll leave at first light, making a wide berth around Fort Laramie and its deadly outbreak. That night, as William lies beside Rebecca in their wagon, sleep eludes him. The children are all asleep, Thomas and James on the floor of the wagon, Emma and Sarah on the small bed they share with Rebecca. William usually sleeps under the wagon, but tonight, with the news of cholera, he wants to be close to his family. "Are we doing the right thing?" he whispers to Rebecca, unsure if she's still awake. "Coming to Oregon, you mean?" Her voice is equally soft. All of it, leaving Illinois, bringing the children on this journey, risking everything. Rebecca is silent for a long moment. My mother asked my father the same question when they moved from Virginia to Kentucky, and I imagine your grandmother asked your grandfather when they built that first cabin in the wilderness. William smiles in the darkness. Harper women always following their foolish men into danger. Not following, Rebecca corrects him. Walking beside, there's a difference. He reaches for her hand, finding comfort in her touch. We'll make it, won't we? We're Harpers, she says simply, too stubborn to fail. It's his father's phrase, and hearing it from his wife's lips makes William's chest tighten with emotion. 3 generations of Harpers, each pushing the frontier further west, each facing different challenges but driven by the same dream, a place of their own, a future for their children. Get some sleep, Rebecca murmurs. Long day tomorrow. William closes his eyes, listening to the night sounds of the camp. Crickets chirping, livestock shifting restlessly, the occasional cough or murmur from nearby wagons. The Oregon Trail has its own lullaby, a symphony of humanity on the move. Tomorrow they'll turn north, avoiding Fort Laramie and its cholera outbreak. They'll face new terrain, unexpected challenges, but they'll face them together, this community of strangers bound by a common destination. As sleep finally claims him, William's last thought is of the land waiting for them in Oregon. 640 acres of fertile soil where the Harper family will put down roots again. Land where his children will grow up, where perhaps his grandchildren will be born, unless, of course, the frontier calls them further still. Because Harper blood, as he told his son, can't be denied. It pulls westward, always westward, toward the unknown horizon. William Harper stands knee-deep in the frigid waters of the American River, his back screaming in protest as he straightens. 6 hours of stooping over a wooden cradle, swirling river mud in hopes of finding that telltale yellow glint. 6 hours, and all he has to show for it is a few flakes in his leather pouch that might be worth $1, maybe. This is what I left my family for, he mutters, stretching his aching muscles. It's 1851, and William Harper has joined the greatest gamble in American history, the California Gold Rush. 2 years earlier, he'd successfully brought his family to Oregon's Willamette Valley. They'd claimed their 640 acres, built a cabin, planted crops. Things were going well, then news had filtered north about the rivers of California literally flowing with gold. Men finding fortunes in a day that would take a lifetime to earn as a farmer. So William, like thousands of others, had left his established homestead to chase dreams of instant wealth. Just for a season, he'd promised Rebecca. I'll be back before winter with enough gold to buy proper lumber for a real house, maybe even glass windows. Now standing in this crowded river where the easy gold was claimed long ago, he's beginning to doubt his decision. Harper, you deaf? The voice belongs to Josiah Miller, a former Ohio schoolteacher who'd abandoned his classroom for the same golden dreams. Shifts changing. Mackenzie wants us upstream tomorrow. William nods, lifting his cradle from the water. Every foot of this river is claimed by someone, worked in carefully scheduled shifts. The good spots are controlled by companies with dozens of men working around the clock. Individual miners like William and Josiah are left with the less promising areas. The place is already picked over by earlier arrivals. Any luck today? Josiah asks as they trudge up the bank. William holds up his small pouch. Barely worth the effort. Better than me. Got nothing but backache and wet feet. Josiah isn't bitter though. Nobody is, really. That's the strange magic of the gold fields. Every day is a fresh lottery. Yesterday's empty pan might be today's bonanza. They make their way back to the mining camp, a chaotic sprawl of tents, crude shanties, and the occasional proper wooden structure housing a saloon or store. What had been empty wilderness 3 years ago is now a makeshift city of 15,000 souls, all focused on a single obsession: gold. Think of the most bizarre music festival you've ever seen, but remove the music, add crushing physical labour, multiply the filth by 10, and drop it in the middle of nowhere with no bathrooms, no police, and absolutely no rules. Now imagine living there for months or years. That's a California mining camp during the gold rush. Mail came, Josiah mentions, as they pass the camp's general store, where prices are 3 times what they'd be back east. Might be something from Oregon. William's heart lifts. Rebecca's letters are his lifeline, his connection to the world he left behind. They arrive sporadically, sometimes 3 at once after weeks of nothing. Inside the crowded store, the proprietor, a shrewd New Yorker named Goldstein, who's made more from selling shovels than most miners have made from using them, waves William over. "Half a letter for you, and that saw you ordered came in, $8. "8? You said 6 last month." Goldstein shrugs unapologetically. Price went up, supply and demand. You want it or not? William bites back his frustration. Everything in the gold fields operates on extortion pricing. The miners produce the wealth, but it's men like Goldstein who collect it, selling necessities at whatever price the market will bear. "I'll take it," William finally says, counting out precious coins. He needs the saw for the sluice box he's building with Josiah, a new approach they hope will yield better results than the labour-intensive cradle method. The letter is from Rebecca, dated 6 weeks earlier. William tucks it inside his shirt. He'll read it tonight by firelight, savouring every word, imagining her voice. "Drink?" Josiah suggests, nodding toward the largest tent in camp, where tinny piano music competes with drunken shouts. William shakes his head. "Going to work on the sluice before dark. Suit yourself." Josiah ambles off toward the tent, like many miners seeking liquid comfort after a disappointing day. William returns to their campsite, a simple canvas tent they share with 3 other men, all from different states but united by the same golden fever. He retrieves the sluice box materials from beneath his bedroll and sets to work with his new saw. The idea is simple. Instead of processing a pan or cradle of sediment at a time, the sluice will use the river's current to wash larger quantities of gravel over a series of riffles that catch the heavier gold. Less labour, more volume, better chances. That's the theory, anyway. As the evening shadows lengthen, William finally takes a break. The other men have all gone to the saloon tent, leaving him blessedly alone. He settles by their small fire, pulls out Rebecca's letter, and carefully breaks the seal. "My dearest William." Spring has come to our valley. The wheat you planted last fall is knee-high and green as emeralds. Thomas helps with the ploughing and planting every day after school. He's growing so tall, almost a man at 12. Emma has become my right hand with household matters, while James tends the chickens and pigs with surprising responsibility for a boy of 10. Little Sarah asks for you each night before prayers. When is Pa coming home with the gold? She wants to know. The Wilsons have built a proper frame house with the lumber from their sawmill. Mrs. Wilson makes a point of mentioning their glass windows whenever we meet after church services. I smile and say how lovely it must be, though I'd trade 100 glass windows for your return. News from California reaches us in fragments. Some say the gold is gone, others that new discoveries are made daily. I don't know what to believe, except that I miss you terribly and pray for your safe return, with or without golden riches. Your loving wife, Rebecca. William folds the letter carefully and tucks it with the others in his small wooden box of treasures. Guilt gnaws at him. Guilt for leaving. Guilt for having so little to show for his absence. The Wilsons with their fine house and glass windows. Mrs. Wilson's smug comments to Rebecca. "I should go home," he says aloud to the empty camp. But even as the words leave his mouth, he knows he won't. Not yet. The dream of striking it rich still burns too brightly. One good find, that's all he needs. One pocket of gold dust or a single nugget the size of his thumb could change everything. The next morning brings a new strategy. William and Josiah, along with their tent mates Erickson, a Swedish immigrant, and Cooper, a former Missouri blacksmith, have pooled their resources to work as a team with their newly completed sluice. "If we each worked alone, we might all find nothing," William explains as they haul the heavy wooden contraption to their claim. "Together we process more gravel, increase our chances." It's sensible, but also a sign of desperation. Solo miners who haven't struck it rich increasingly band together, seeking strength in numbers. Their claim is a 20-foot stretch of riverbank that looked promising during yesterday's survey. The work quickly falls into rhythm. Cooper and Erickson shovel sediment into the sluice's upper end, while William and Josiah monitor the flow, occasionally clearing debris from the riffles. By midday, they've processed more material than William could have managed alone in a week, and results are showing a promising accumulation of black sand and tiny gold flecks in the sluice's traps. "Told you it would work," Josiah crows, eyes bright with renewed hope. At day's end, they carefully collect their take, separating gold from sand using mercury, a dangerous but effective method. The final yield is encouraging, almost an ounce of gold dust between them. Split 4 ways, it's still the best day any of them have had in weeks. "Worth celebrating," Cooper declares. "First round's on me." The main saloon tent is packed with miners unwinding after a day's labour. It's a strange, volatile mix of nationalities and backgrounds. Americans from every state rubbing shoulders with Mexicans, Chileans, Chinese, Europeans, and even a few Australians, all drawn by the same siren call of instant wealth. "It's a regular Tower of Babel," Josiah comments as they push through the crowd toward the bar, a rough plank laid across 2 barrels. The piano player pounds out a lively tune while a woman in a faded red dress sings bawdy lyrics that would scandalise folks back home. Clouds of pipe and cigar smoke hang in the air. At crude tables, men gamble away their day's findings in games of faro, poker and monte. William orders whiskey, though he's not much of a drinker. It's what men do in the gold fields. Work all day, drink and gamble all night, then rise with the sun to start again. An endless cycle of labour, hope, and usually disappointment. "You hear about the strike over at Murphy's Diggings?" A miner at the bar is talking loudly to his companion. "Fellow hit a pocket yesterday worth $3,000. $3,000 in one damn day." William tries not to listen, tries not to feed the desperate hope such stories inspire. For every true tale of instant riches, there are 100 exaggerations and outright lies, but still the possibility nags at him. It could happen. It does happen. Why not to him? "To the sluice," Josiah raises his glass in toast, "and to tomorrow being even better than today." They drink to that, a fragile camaraderie born of shared struggle and shared dreams. Later that night, as William lies in their crowded tent, listening to Erickson's snores and Cooper's occasional sleep-talking, he mentally composes a letter to Rebecca. He'll write it tomorrow, tell her about their new sluice and improved prospects. He won't mention the $3,000 strike at Murphy's Diggings. Better not to raise false hopes. 2 months pass in much the same pattern. Some days are better than others, but none deliver the fortune William had dreamed of. Their sluice operation expands, becoming more efficient, but the gold seems to be playing a cruel game of diminishing returns. The easy pickings are gone. What remains requires ever more effort to extract. Then rumours begin circulating about a new approach, hydraulic mining. Companies are bringing in massive water cannons to literally wash away entire hillsides, processing tons of material at once. That's the future, Josiah declares after they witness such an operation in action. Our little sluice can't compete with that. It's an awesome, terrifying sight. Hillsides dissolving under pressurised water, ancient trees toppling, the landscape itself being rewritten in mankind's desperate search for gold. The scale of destruction is unlike anything William has ever seen. Doesn't seem right, he murmurs as they watch. Land that took God thousands of years to make, undone in an afternoon. It's progress, Cooper shrugs. Same as the railroads back east cutting through mountains. Man conquering nature. William isn't so sure. The hydraulic operations feel different. Not just changing the land, but obliterating it. And for what? Gold that will end up in some banker's vault in San Francisco or New York. As summer gives way to fall, William finally admits what he's been avoiding for months. He's not going to strike it rich. The gold is still here, but it now belongs to the companies with their hydraulic cannons and armies of wage labourers. The day of the independent miner is ending. I'm heading home, he tells his partners one evening. Back to Oregon, back to my family. They don't try to talk him out of it. Many miners are reaching the same conclusion, packing up their meagre possessions and returning to whatever lives they left behind, if those lives still wait for them. Some have been gone for years, chasing an elusive dream while farms foreclosed, businesses failed, and families moved on. What will you tell your wife? Josiah asks as he helps William pack. William pats his leather pouch containing about $60 in gold dust, his total earnings after nearly 8 months of backbreaking labour. The truth that I gambled and lost. Not entirely lost, Josiah points out. $60 is nothing to sneeze at. It's not glass windows and a proper frame house, William sighs. It's not what I promised her. His journey back to Oregon is quieter than the frenzied trip south had been. The roads are filled with men like him, subdued, reflective, most returning with far less than they'd dreamed of. Some won't go home at all, too ashamed to face families after years of broken promises. Along the way, William encounters a wagon train heading south. Fresh-faced men with excited chatter about the gold fields. He considers warning them, telling them the brutal truth about what awaits, but he sees the hope in their eyes, the same hope that had driven him, and holds his tongue. Some lessons must be learned firsthand. When he finally crests the hill overlooking their homestead in the Willamette Valley, William pauses to take in the sight. The cabin looks smaller than he remembered, the cleared fields more modest, but smoke rises cheerfully from the chimney, and he can see a figure in the yard. Thomas, surely, though taller than when he left. For a moment, William is gripped by doubt. What if Rebecca resents him for leaving? What if the children have forgotten him? What if they've managed so well without him that his return is an unwelcome disruption? But before these thoughts can take deeper root, Thomas glances up, freezes, then bolts toward the cabin, shouting words William can't quite hear but understands nonetheless. Pa's home. Pa's home. And suddenly the yard is alive with movement. Rebecca emerging from the cabin, Emma and James running from the barn, little Sarah toddling behind trying to keep up with her siblings, all racing toward him as he urges his tired horse down the slope. He dismounts just in time to catch Sarah as she launches herself into his arms. "Did you bring gold, Pa? Did you?" William laughs, the first genuine laugh in longer than he can remember. "Just a little, squirrel, just a little." Rebecca reaches him last, standing slightly apart as the children clamour around him. Her eyes search his face, reading the story of his failure before he can confess it. "You're home," she says simply. "That's all that matters." Later, after the excited chatter of children has been replaced by the deep breathing of sleep, William and Rebecca sit by the fire. He's told her everything, the back-breaking work, the meagre findings, the dashed hopes. "I'm sorry," he concludes, staring into the flames. "I should never have gone." Rebecca is quiet for a long moment. "Maybe not," she finally says, "but you're not the only one. Half the men in our church congregation left for California. Most haven't returned yet. And those who did came back with stories, not gold." She reaches for his hand. "But we survived. The children and I managed the farm. We even expanded the wheat field and added 6 sheep." William looks around their cabin. Still rough-hewn logs, still no glass windows. Not what he'd promised, not what the Wilsons have. "The Wilsons," he begins, "have a pretty house and a miserable marriage," Rebecca interrupts. Mrs. Wilson may talk about her glass windows, but she never mentions Mr. Wilson's fondness for whiskey or how he treats her when he's had too much. William squeezes her hand gratefully. "Still, I wanted to give you more." "We have enough." Rebecca's voice is firm. "And we have something the gold couldn't buy." "What's that?" "We're Harpers," she says, echoing what had become their family motto. "Too stubborn to fail." William smiles, feeling the weight of months of disappointment begin to lift. Yes, the California adventure had been a failure in one sense, but he's home now, with the woman who walks beside him, not behind him, with children who still run to greet him despite his broken promises. With land that produces wheat instead of gold, but feeds his family nonetheless. And as he drifts towards sleep that night, in a real bed instead of a crowded tent, William realises something important. His grandfather Thomas hadn't found riches in the Appalachian wilderness, nor had his father James on the Illinois prairie. What they'd found was something more valuable. A place to belong, a legacy to build, a future to shape. That, perhaps, is the true gold of the American frontier. Not what can be dug from the ground, but what can be built upon it. Sarah Harper Miller stands at the doorway of her sod house, squinting at the horizon where dark clouds gather. At 26, her face already shows the weathering of prairie life. Skin tanned and lined from sun and wind, hands calloused from work that never ends. She shields her eyes, trying to judge the distance of the storm. "Daniel," she calls, voice carrying across the Kansas prairie to where her husband works the small kitchen garden. "Storm's coming. Better get the animals in." The year is 1874, and Sarah, once the toddling squirrel who asked if her father had brought gold from California, is now a homesteader in her own right. The frontier has shifted again, moving from the timbered valleys of Oregon to the vast treeless expanses of the Great Plains. Daniel Miller nods at his wife's warning, immediately dropping his hoe. On the plains, you don't ignore approaching storms. They can transform from distant clouds to deadly fury in minutes, bringing hail that can destroy a season's crops, or lightning that can incinerate a homestead. "Matthew," Daniel calls to their 7-year-old son, "help me with the chickens." Their homestead is modest, 160 acres claimed under the Homestead Act of 1862, which promised free land to anyone willing to live on it and improve it for 5 years. The Harper family wanderlust had called to Sarah just as it had to her father, grandfather and great-grandfather before her. When she'd married Daniel 6 years earlier, they'd immediately set their sights on the Kansas prairie, where land was available for nothing but sweat and determination. Lucy, bring in the washing, Sarah instructs her 5-year-old daughter, who's been playing with a corn husk doll near the door. Quick now. As her family scrambles to prepare for the approaching storm, Sarah takes one last look at the horizon. The clouds have that greenish tinge that spells trouble, possibly hail. She sighs, thinking of their struggling corn crop. One bad storm could wipe out months of work. Inside their soddy, as these unique prairie homes are called, Sarah moves efficiently, closing the single window with its precious glass pane, a wedding gift from her parents. The house itself is unlike anything her ancestors built on previous frontiers. With no forests to provide logs, plain settlers use what the land offers, soil itself. Their home is literally cut from the earth, blocks of densely packed prairie sod stacked like bricks with the grass side down. The walls are 3 feet thick, providing excellent insulation against both summer heat and winter cold. The roof is also sod, supported by cottonwood poles hauled from a creek 10 miles away. It's a far cry from the log cabins of Sarah's forebears, but it serves. Warm in winter, cool in summer, and, most importantly, almost impossible to burn down on a prairie where fire is a constant threat. The first fat raindrops hit the roof with dull thud. What if you woke up tomorrow in America in the year 1900? No phone beside your bed, no running water, just the factory whistle screaming at 5 a.m. You're 12 years old, your hands are already bleeding from yesterday's work, and you've got 14 hours of textile mill ahead. Here's what life was really like in early 1900s America. Hey, quick thing before we start. If you actually listen to these regularly, hit like or subscribe. I always wonder where everyone's at, so comment your city and what time it is. Weird to think some of you are having breakfast in London while I'm recording this at night here in the States. Alright, let's head back to 1900. Trust me, it's going to be quite a ride. But first, get comfortable. Seriously, adjust those pillows. Pull up that blanket. Because where we're going, you're going to want to be cozy. Your eyes snap open in the dark. Not because you want them to, because the factory whistle just ripped through the Lower East Side of Manhattan like a banshee. 5 o'clock, on the dot, every damn morning. The first thing that hits you is the cold. January in New York 1900. No central heating, no insulation. Just you, your 2 younger siblings and a paper-thin blanket on a mattress stuffed with corn husks. Yeah, corn husks. They crackle every time you move. And after a few months, they basically turn to dust. But hey, it's better than the floor. You're 12 years old. Your name is Giuseppe, but everyone at the factory calls you Joey. Your family came over from Italy 3 years ago. The American dream, right? Your little brother Marco is pressed against your back, stealing your body heat. He's 9. Too young for the factory, thank God. Your sister Anna, she's 7, curled up at your feet like a cat. The 3 of you share this mattress. Your parents sleep on another one across the room. Room. That's generous. It's more like a box, maybe 10 feet by 12 feet. One window that faces a brick wall 6 inches away. The whole family lives here, eats here, exists here. The smell hits you next. It's complicated. There's the mildew from the walls that never quite dry out, the chamber pot in the corner that won't get emptied until someone makes the trip down 4 flights of stairs to the privy in the courtyard, the smell of unwashed bodies, because bathing means hauling water up those same 4 flights, heating it on the stove if you've got coal, and even then you're basically just moving the dirt around. but mostly it's the smell of too many people in too small a space. The Kowalskis upstairs with their 6 kids, the O'Briens next door with their 5, the Goldsteins down the hall with their 8. This building, this 5-story walk-up on Orchard Street, it's got maybe 40 families crammed into it, 200 people, 4 toilets. You sit up, careful not to wake Marco and Anna. The corn husks protest. Your mother is already up. You can hear her in the darkness. The scratch of a match. The tiny flame illuminates her face for a second before she lights the kerosene lamp. She looks older than her 32 years. This place, this life, it ages you fast. Giuseppe, she whispers in Italian. Time to get up. Your feet hit the floor and immediately you regret it. The wooden boards are ice cold. There's frost on the inside of the window. Actually inside. You can see your breath in the lamplight. Not like your warm bed right now with its soft sheets and thermostat set to whatever perfect temperature you want. You pull on your work clothes, same ones as yesterday and the day before and the day before that. They get washed on Sunday if there's time, if there's soap, if there's energy left after 6 days of work. The shirt is more patches than original fabric at this point. Your mother's had to stitching and restitching with whatever scraps she can find. The pants are too short. You've grown 3 inches this year, but new clothes? That's not happening. Not when the whole family makes maybe $12 a week, if everyone's working, if no one's sick, if the factory doesn't cut hours. Your boots, God, your boots. They used to be your father's. The sole is separating from the leather, and you've stuffed newspaper inside to cover the holes. Your toes poke through anyway. In about an hour, when you're walking through the slush and horse manure of the streets, your feet will be soaked, and they'll stay that way for the next 14 hours. Your mother hands you breakfast, a heel of bread, hard as a brick, and a tin cup of something that might charitably be called coffee. It's mostly chicory and hot water, but it's warm, and that's what matters. You dunk the bread to soften it. Your back teeth hurt. No dentist for people like you. When teeth go bad, you live with it until you can't. Then you find someone with pliers. Papa already gone? You ask, though you know the answer. Hour ago, your mother says. Your father works at the docks, unloading ships. He leaves at 4 to be first in line for work. Some days he gets picked, some days he doesn't. When he doesn't, he comes home with empty hands and empty eyes. You gulp down the coffee water, kiss your mother's cheek. She smells like kerosene and exhaustion. Be careful, she says, like she does every morning. Like being careful is something you have any control over when you're working in a textile mill with machines that could rip your arm off if you zone out for even a second. You're at the door when Anna's voice stops you. Joey? She's awake, peering at you from the mattress. Bring home candy. You force a smile. Sure, Piccola. Candy. There hasn't been candy in months, but lies are free and sometimes they're all you have to give. The hallway is darker than your apartment. No windows here. You feel your way to the stairs by memory, your hand sliding along the greasy wall. The Goldstein baby is crying somewhere. The O'Brien patriarch is coughing that wet tubercular cough that's been getting worse for weeks. Soon he won't be coughing at all. 4 flights down. Each step creaks. Some are rotting through. Mrs. Kowalski broke her ankle on these stairs last month. She still can't work. Her oldest boy, Stefan, he's 14. He's pulling double shifts to make up the money. The front door of the tenement opens onto Orchard Street, and the cold hits you like a physical thing. It's maybe 15 degrees. Your thin jacket might as well be made of paper, but at least you're outside, away from the suffocating closeness of the building. The street is already alive. This is the Lower East Side, the most densely populated place in the world. Yeah, the world. More people per square acre than Bombay, than London, than anywhere. Horse-drawn carts clatter over the cobblestones. Vendors are setting up their pushcarts, selling everything from rotting vegetables to suspiciously fresh meat. The smell of horse manure is everywhere, frozen in some places, fresh and steaming in others. You step around a dead cat, or maybe it's a rat. Hard to tell in the pre-dawn darkness. The city doesn't clean these streets. Not down here. Not for people like you. Other kids are emerging from tenements, all heading the same direction. You recognize faces but don't know names. Polish kids, Jewish kids, Irish kids, Italian kids like you. All of you moving like a tide toward the factory districts. You fall into step with Tommy Flanagan from 2 buildings over. He's 13, been working at the mills for 3 years already. His left hand is missing 2 fingers, got caught in a loom last summer. The company gave him 2 days off, unpaid. Cold enough to freeze the balls off a brass monkey, Tommy says, his breath making clouds in the air. Least we're not at the coal mines, you say. It's true. Your cousin Salvatore, he's down in Pennsylvania, working the anthracite mines. He's 11, spends 12 hours a day in the dark, picking slate from coal. His letters, when he can get someone to write them, describe a special kind of hell. At least you see sunlight. Sometimes you pass a newsboy, maybe 8 years old, already hawking papers. Spanish flu spreading in Europe. Roosevelt demands reform 2 cents. Get your papers. Spanish flu. That's all you need, as if tuberculosis, cholera and diphtheria aren't enough. Disease spreads through the tenements like wildfire. Last summer, scarlet fever took 3 kids from your building in 1 week. The factory looms ahead, a 5-story brick monster belching black smoke into the dawn sky. The Anderson Textile Mill, your home for the next 14 hours, 6 days a week, 52 weeks a year, no vacation, no sick days, you stop working, you stop eating. Other kids are converging on the entrance, some as young as 7 or 8, though officially that's illegal now. Officially, the foremen don't check birth certificates. They check if your fingers are small enough to tie the threads, if you're short enough to crawl under the machines, if you're desperate enough to work for $3 a week. You're making $4 now, veteran wages for a 12-year-old. Your mother tells you to be proud you're contributing, you're helping the family survive. But survive for what? To wake up tomorrow and do it again? To watch your little sister's eyes go dead when she starts working next year? To end up like your father, 40 years old and looking 60, broken by labour that barely keeps you alive. The factory whistle screams again. 5:30. Time to clock in. You think about your bed right now, your actual bed in your actual time. Warm, soft, safe, a phone beside it with an alarm you can snooze, a job that probably won't kill you, laws that say you can't work more than 40 hours without overtime. We won, eventually. Kids like Joey, like Tommy with his missing fingers, like all these small bodies filing into the factory in the freezing dawn. They fought and suffered, and some of them died, but they changed things. Child labour laws, safety regulations, the 8-hour workday. But that's all in the future. Right now, it's January 1900, and you're 12 years old, and the factory door is swallowing you whole. The foyer of the factory is slightly warmer than outside. Slightly. You can still see your breath, but at least the wind isn't cutting through your jacket anymore. The time clock stands against the wall like a judge. You get in line with the other kids, waiting your turn. The older workers are already inside. They get first punch. Adults, teenagers, anyone over 14 is considered senior staff. You watch them shuffle past, these men and women who look ancient but are probably only in their 30s. The mill ages you, strips years off your life with every breath of cotton dust, every hour hunched over machinery, every day without sunlight. Move it along, rats. That's Mr. Kowalski, the floor supervisor. No relation to your upstairs neighbours, just another Polish name in a city full of them. He's massive, 6 feet tall and built like a brick wall. The kind of man who got his job by being meaner than everyone else. His favourite thing is his stick, a 3-foot piece of oak he uses to encourage faster work. You punch your card. 5:31 a.m. 1 minute late, that's a penny off your wages. Doesn't matter that you've been standing in line. Doesn't matter that there's only one time clock for 200 workers. Late is late. The main floor of the mill hits you like walking into a wall. The noise is incredible. Hundreds of power looms running at once, all of them clattering and banging and shrieking. You'll be deaf by 40. Everyone is. Your grandfather back in Italy, he was a farmer. Lived to 70 with his hearing intact. Here, different story. The cotton dust is already thick in the air. It's like fog, but fog that gets in your lungs and never comes out. Mill workers' cough, they call it. Everyone has it. That dry, hacking sound that follows you home, keeps you up at night, gets worse every year until it doesn't. The heat from the machines is starting to build. In an hour, it'll be sweltering in here. In summer, kids pass out from the heat. In winter, you go from freezing to broiling to freezing again when you leave. Your body never adjusts. It just endures. You make your way to your station. You're a doffer now, which is a step up from being a sweeper. Sweepers are the youngest kids, the ones who crawl under the running machines to clean out the cotton fibres. Every week someone gets their hair caught, or their hand, or worse. As a doffer, your job is to remove the full bobbins from the spinning frames and replace them with empty ones. Sounds simple. It's not. The machines don't stop. Ever. You have to dart in, grab the full bobbin, swap it for an empty one, all while the machinery is spinning at hundreds of rotations per minute. One wrong move, 1 second of distraction. You think about Tommy's missing fingers. Joey, you awake or what? That's Marie, the Irish girl who works the frame next to yours. She's 11, been here 2 years. Red hair that she keeps tied back tight ever since she saw Lucy Brennan get scalped when her braids got caught in a gear. Yeah, I'm awake, you say, taking your position. The frames stretch out in long rows, each one a monument to progress. That's what the owners call it. Progress. These machines can do the work of 100 hand spinners. They just need children to tend them. Small fingers for delicate work, short bodies that don't need to be paid adult wages. You start your routine, watch the bobbins fill with thread, wait for the exact moment, dart in, swap, dart out, repeat for 14 hours. Within minutes, you're sweating despite the cold morning. The work is constant. No sitting, no stopping. If Mr. Kowalski catches you idle, that's a crack with his stick. Or worse, you're fired. And there's a line of kids outside waiting to take your place. The cotton fibres float through the air like snow. Pretty if it wasn't killing you. You tie your handkerchief over your nose and mouth, but it doesn't help much. By the end of the day, when you blow your nose, it'll be black. Around you, the mill is a symphony of misery. Kids coughing, machines screaming, supervisors shouting, and underneath it all, the constant clack, clack, clack of the looms, like a giant clock counting down the hours of your childhood. This isn't like your job. Your job probably has breaks, labour laws, someone making sure you don't die on the clock. Here, you're not a person. You're a part of the machine, a replaceable part. Heads up. You look over to see little Michael O'Malley struggling with a full bobbin. He's 8, shouldn't even be here, but his father died in a construction accident last month and his mother needs the money. The bobbin is almost as big as he is. You want to help him, but you can't leave your station. That's another penny gone, another step closer to your family not eating. So you watch as he wrestles with it, his small arms shaking with the effort. This is childhood in 1900. Not school, not playing, not growing up safe and loved. this. But you know what? These kids like Joey and Marie and little Michael, they're tougher than anyone gives them credit for. They're surviving something that would break most people. And some of them, not many, but some, they're going to grow up and change things. In 20 years, some of these mill children will be union organisers. In 30 years, they'll be pushing through Congress the laws that end child labour. In 40 years, they'll be making sure their own children never see the inside of a factory. But that's the future. Right now, it's 6 a.m. in a textile mill in New York City, and you're 12 years old, and you've got 13 and a half more hours to go. 6:30 now. The mill's fully alive. Every machine running, every worker at their station. The cotton dust is already thick enough that you can barely see the far wall. Your throat's starting to scratch. That familiar burn. Marie leans over between bobbin changes. You hear about the Murkowski girl? You shake your head. Hands still working, always working. Caught her hair yesterday, second shift. Marie's voice is flat, matter of fact. Pulled half her scalp off before someone hit the emergency stop. The emergency stop, right. The one that takes 4 men and a crowbar to actually engage. The one that costs the company $5 in lost production every minute it's down. The one they only use if someone's actually dying, and sometimes not even then. She alive, you ask? Yeah, but she ain't coming back. No workers' compensation in 1900. You get hurt, you're done. Your family better hope someone else can work, or it's the poorhouse. Or worse, 7 o'clock. Your fingers are already raw from the cotton fibres. They're like tiny needles working their way under your fingernails into every cut and scrape. By the end of the day, your hands will be bleeding. They always are. Little Michael O'Malley is struggling again. The kid's too small for this job, even by child labour standards. You watch him trying to reach a high bobbin, standing on his tiptoes, wobbling. Then it happens, his sleeve catches. Michael, but your shout is swallowed by the machine noise. The spinning frame starts pulling him in. His eyes go wide, pure terror. Without thinking, you abandon your station and dive for him. You grab his other arm and pull hard as you can. The machine's stronger, but you've got desperation on your side. The sleeve tears. Michael falls backward, lands on you. You both hit the floor hard. He's crying, but he's got all his parts. That's what counts. What the hell is this? Mr. Kowalski towers over you both, his stick raised. His sleeve got caught, sir. The stick comes down on your shoulder. Pain explodes down your arm. You left your station. That's 2 pennies. And you? He points the stick at Michael. Stop crying or you're out. Michael chokes back his sobs. He's 8 years old. This is what progress looks like in 1900. This is what's building America into an industrial powerhouse. The tears of 8-year-olds, the blood of 12-year-olds, the broken bodies of anyone too poor to be anywhere else. 7:30, your shoulders throbbing, but you keep working. You can't afford to slow down. The bobbins don't care if you're hurt. New girl starts today. Can't be more than 7. She's with the sweepers, crawling under the machines with a brush and pan. Her mother's working 3 rows over, keeping one eye on her daughter while trying to maintain her own quota. The girl's name is Sophia. Greek family just off the boat. She doesn't speak English yet, but she doesn't need to. The machines speak a universal language. Work or starve. You watch her crawl under a running loom, inches from mechanisms that could crush her skull like an egg. Her mother's hands are shaking as she works. First day is always the hardest. After that, you just go numb. 8 o'clock, 2.5 hours in, 11 and a half to go. Your back is screaming. The human body isn't meant to stand in one position for 14 hours, making the same repetitive motions. You're 12. Your spine is still growing. In 10 years, you'll be permanently hunched like half the adult workers here. But hey, at least you're not at your desk job right now, complaining about your ergonomic chair not being quite right. Joey, Marie hisses. Kowalski's coming. You speed up your movements. Look busy. Always look busy. Even when there's nothing to do, find something. Idle hands don't just do the devil's work here. They get you fired. Kowalski stalks past, his stick tapping against his palm. He stops at Sophia's mother, watches her for a moment, then moves on. She exhales. We all do. 8:30. Someone's throwing up. You can hear it over the machines, which means it's bad. Probably heat exhaustion, even though it's January. The mills are like ovens. All that machinery generating heat, nowhere for it to go. It's a Polish boy, maybe 10. He's on his hands and knees, heaving. The cotton dust makes everyone sick eventually, but some faster than others. Get him out, Kowalski shouts, and dock his pay for the clean-up. 2 older workers drag the boy toward the door. He won't be back. Can't show weakness here. There's 100 kids outside who won't throw up on the floor. 9 o'clock. Break time, someone shouts. Break time. That's funny. You get 15 minutes to use the bathroom, get water, and eat if you brought anything. 15 minutes for 200 workers and 4 toilets. The rush for the privies is insane. Kids are literally fighting to get in line. You've learned to hold it. Better to wait for the afternoon break than waste your entire 15 minutes in line. Instead, you head for the water barrel. It's lukewarm and tastes like metal, but your throat is coated with cotton dust and you need it. You gulp it down, knowing you'll pay for it later when you need to pee and can't leave your station. Marie's beside you, unwrapping a small bundle, half a potato and a slice of bread that's more mould than wheat. Want some? She offers. You shake your head. You're hungry, but not that hungry. Yet. She shrugs and eats it anyway. When you're poor, you don't waste food. Even mouldy food. Your stomach's already destroyed from all the crap you've eaten over the years. What's a little more damage? You hear Roosevelt might run for president, she says between bites. Yeah? Says he'll bust up the trusts, make things better for workers. You want to laugh, but it would hurt your throat. Politicians have been promising to make things better since before you were born. Yet here you are, 12 years old, working in a textile mill for pennies while men in New York mansions light cigars with dollar bills. Maybe, you say, because what else can you say? Hope is all some of us have. 9:15, back to work. The frames seem louder after the break, or maybe it's just that you got used to the relative quiet for 15 minutes. Your ears are ringing. They always are these days. Sometimes at night, lying on your corn husk mattress, the ringing is all you can hear. New problem. One of your bobbins is jamming. The thread keeps breaking. If you can't fix it, production slows. If production slows, Kowalski comes over. If Kowalski comes over, you try to retie the thread, but your fingers are shaking. Exhaustion, hunger, fear, all of it making your hands unsteady. Here, it's Stefan, the Kowalski boy from your building, not the supervisor, the other one. He's 14, been working here since he was 8. His fingers move like lightning, fixing the thread in seconds. Thanks, you whisper. He nods and moves back to his station. Small kindnesses, that's how you survive here. Looking out for each other when the bosses aren't watching. 9:45. Something's happening at the far end of the floor. Commotion, shouting, then the sound everyone dreads. A scream, cut short. The machines don't stop. They never stop. But everyone's looking now, trying to see what happened. Word travels fast in the mill, whispered from station to station like a telegram. Brennan's boy, hand caught in the gears. Brennan's boy, Timothy. He's 10, was 10. You can see them carrying something out, something covered in a bloody sheet, something too small to be a whole person. Everyone goes back to work. What else can you do? Stop and mourn? That's a penny off your wages. Get angry? That's your job gone. So you work, and you try not to think about Timothy Brennan, who was 10 years old and had a little sister named Ruth, who's probably going to have to take his place here next week because the family needs the money. This is America in 1900, the land of opportunity, the golden door, the place where streets are paved with gold. Yeah, gold mixed with the blood of 10-year-olds. 10 o'clock. 4.5 hours down, your hands are bleeding now, right on schedule. The cotton fibres have worked their way through your calluses. You wipe the blood on your pants and keep going. Sophia, the new Greek girl, is crying under the machines. Silent tears because noise gets you fired. Her hands are black with machine oil and cotton dust. She doesn't understand why she can't go home. Doesn't understand that this is home now. 14 hours a day, 6 days a week. Her mother can't go to her, can't comfort her, can't do anything but watch and work and pray her daughter survives long enough to get used to it. You remember your first day. You cried too. Everyone does. Then you learn that tears don't change anything. They just make it harder to see the machines that are trying to kill you. Hey kid, you call out to Sophia next time she crawls past. You say it's soft, so Kowalski won't hear. She looks up at you with huge brown eyes. You don't share a language, but you pull out the piece of hard candy you've been saving for 3 weeks, the one you were going to give to Anna. You toss it to her. She catches it, confused. You mime putting it in your mouth. She understands, pops it in. Her eyes go wide. Sugar. Probably the first sweet thing she's had in months. It's nothing. A piece of candy. But for a second, she almost smiles. Marie sees what you did. That was for your sister. Yeah. You're an idiot, Joey. Yeah, but we both know I did the right thing. Because if we don't help each other, if we don't hold on to some scrap of humanity in this hellhole, then we might as well be machines ourselves. 10:30. The morning shift supervisor comes through, Mr. Harrison. He's worse than Kowalski because he's smart. Kowalski just beats you. Harrison finds ways to make you beat yourself. He stops at each station, checking production. If you're behind quota, that's a fine. If you're too far ahead, he raises your quota. You can't win. That's the point. He gets to my station, looks at my numbers. You're down from yesterday, Giuseppe. He uses my real name. He knows I hate it. Knows it marks me as different, foreign, other. Had to fix a jammed bobbin, sir. Excuses don't make textiles, boy. He marks something in his ledger. That's another penny gone, maybe 2. At this rate, I'll owe the company money by the end of the week. That's not a joke. Some weeks, after all the fines and deductions, workers end up in debt to the mill. Company store prices, company housing rent, it all adds up. They own you more completely than slavery ever did. At least, slaves knew what they were. The machines roar on, always hungry, always feeding on cotton and childhood in equal measure. You look around at all these kids, Polish kids, Irish kids, Italian kids, Jewish kids, Greek kids, all of us different, all of us exactly the same, all of us feeding ourselves to the machines one day at a time, in your real bed, in your real time. You're probably worried about your alarm clock, about being 5 minutes late to a job that won't kill you, about whether to have coffee or tea. These kids don't get those choices. They get up, they work, they survive, or they don't. That's it. That's the whole menu. But here's the thing about these kids, these tiny warriors of the Industrial Revolution. They're going to win. Not today, not tomorrow, not for years, but eventually.